It's time to check out all of the Zerg units and structures in StarCraft Remastered. In case you missed it, I already did make a video about all of the Terran pieces. I'll go ahead and link that one down below the subscribe button in the description of this video. Because today, all I'm going to do is just simply show off all of these Zerg units compared to the old graphics. Now, if I hit F5 on the keyboard, you can see me switch live between the remastered graphics as well as the good old 1998 ones. I mean, I'm not going to lie, look at that. That is nostalgia at its very finest. But regardless, let's have a quick look at what they look like in, you know, UHD. They most definitely do look a little bit prettier. Anyway, let's get started right here by creating some of our overlords. Of course, those are going to be a necessity if we want to be producing anything. Because, well, you know, they provide us the supply that we need. I love the screams of the Zerg overlord. Row, row. Anyway, of course, next video that I will be making about StarCraft Remastered will indeed be covering all of the Protoss units instead. So in case you're interested, go ahead and make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you get a notification as soon as that video goes live. As well as, you know, tons more StarCraft Remastered videos that I do indeed have planned. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Let's create our first extractor here, which interestingly enough is like twice the size of a hatchery. I'm not entirely sure what's up with that. And then secondly, we'll also be producing our first premier tech structure in the sense that we need a spawning pool. Of course, a spawning pool, a very important structure. Not only will it allow us to create Zerglings, we'll be able to continue our tech path once that building is done. But look at the size of that extractor, seriously. It's still throwing me off, even after already playing this for about a week or so right now. It's so big. It's just simply such a large structure. It's literally twice the size of the Zerg hatchery. I'm not entirely sure if that's lore accurate. I'm pretty sure it probably is. Someone in the comment section will probably be able to let me know. I haven't actually read all of the StarCraft books yet. Regardless, though, here we go. Let's go ahead and create our second hatchery right here as well so we can produce some additional larvae. As I'm sure many of you are aware, in StarCraft Remastered, and StarCraft 1 for that matter, I suppose, there's no such thing as like queen injects. The only way I'm going to be able to get additional larvae is by creating additional hatcheries as well. I cannot spread any creep. Creep in this game in general, compared to StarCraft 2, is far less important as well. But let's go ahead and create our first set of Zerglings. And indeed, yes, they do still come out in pairs of 2. Now, interestingly enough, I saw a little bit of confusion about that in the past. There's only one rally point for your main buildings in StarCraft Remastered. You cannot just simply rally your workers towards a mineral line. You're gonna have to make drones and then send them over towards that mineral patch as well. So that does mean that if you set your rally point across the map to try and see if you can get your Zerglings across fast, they're not gonna be the only ones that move towards that rally point. Your overlords as well as your drones will also try and move to that direction. Anyway, here we go. We got our first basic units out, of course, probably the most iconic unit for all of the Zerg units, or for all of the Zerg pieces out there. Let's go ahead and get metabolic boost upgrade, which of course will increase the speed of these little guys. And I think that, once again, just like I did with the Vulture, I'll go ahead and rally these units back and forth here for a little while, make them patrol, just so you can see the speed difference that the metabolic boost does indeed make. Now, contrary to StarCraft 2, there is no Rogeworn, of course, right? But on top of that, there is also a beautiful unit that you can make a tier 1 called the Ultralisk. You do not need to tech up towards a Lair like you do need in StarCraft 2. You can just simply produce that, I guess, instead of the Rogeworn in, you know, the hatchery tech already, which is pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and produce a couple more drones, just a handful more. I'll go ahead and rally both of my hatcheries towards this location right here. And I think I may want to create another overlord or two here in just a bit, too. Now, Zergling speed, just about to finish up. We'll keep an eye out on that, because currently my links are not particularly fast, but I found out that all of the speed upgrades in this game, compared to the StarCraft 2 ones at the very least, they're very, very significant. Like, units move around so much faster. There we go. Look at him. How much faster is that? It seriously is like ×2. It makes a big amount of difference. Also, since they are much smaller, they seem much easier to micro as well, compared to like Dragoons and Goliaths and the like. Anyway, let's go ahead and produce our first bunch of Ultralisk. Ultralisk, of course, very, very good for you know, early game pressure as well as mid-game pressure. Generally speaking, in the late game, I guess they do fall off a little. But at the hatchery tech, we can still produce a couple of other buildings as well. First off, we have got the Creep Colony. Now, the Creep Colony, for those of you unfamiliar, is exactly what it sounds like. It will basically be like a creep tumor from StarCraft 2. You're going to be able to expand your creep. Now, creep in this game is not nearly as efficient as it is in StarCraft 2. But the reason why I'm going to be building 2 right here is so I can actually morph them into, well, the so-called Spore Colony as well as the Sunken Colony. They're essentially basically like the Spore Crawler and the Spine Crawler from StarCraft 2, but let's go ahead and create our Evolution Chamber as well, because we're gonna need one, and I think that is the hotkey, yeah, hotkey S, to be able to produce one of them, because without it, I'm not gonna be able to produce my Spore Colonies just yet. For now, I'll produce my very first Sunken Colony. Now, Sunken Colonies are quite a bit stronger, it seems like, than Spine Crawlers in StarCraft 2 are. At the very least, they've got a lot more range. At the very least, it feels like that. Maybe I'm mistaken. Once again, here are the old graphics. I mean, not bad, very nostalgic, but I think I most definitely do prefer these right here. Here's our Sunken Colony already. Now, the Sunken Colony, it basically spikes up out of the ground, just like that, and deals quite a bit of damage. It deals quite a bit of damage. Now, the one thing that kind of surprised me, well, we'll also morph in a Spore Colony right there, just so we can have some anti-air right here as well. Let's go ahead and get an overboard close. The thing that surprised me is the range on it, so I'm not entirely sure what it is. But it seems to hit very far. Like, look at that. It can reach all the way up to the ramp. The range on Sunken Colonies is very significant. Now, at the same time, of course, you can also use the Spore Colony right there to deal some damage to air units instead. And it works very similarly as it is in StarCraft 2, with the exception that it also pushes the creep a little bit further out. Now, of course, we can morph our Hydras into lurkers. For now, we'll just go ahead and, well, I guess I'll show you quickly what their attacks are like. Very iconic sound right there, of course. I guess we can do the same for the Zerglings. Zerglings coming over here. Kill that Sunken Colony so people can hear what you sound like. Come on, guys. Alrighty. In order to do that, we're gonna have to tech up towards a Lair. So let's go ahead and start up the Lair and tech up towards tier 2. Now, there are a couple of buildings we can produce here, but I'm pretty sure I covered every single last one of them already. You can see there are, you know, not quite as many buildings as there are in StarCraft 2 in StarCraft 1. So, you know, we'll just simply have to make sure that we make the best of what we have got right now. Now, there's a couple of cool micro tricks that you can do with Zerg. For example, one of the most typical ones is indeed the Ultralisk. I'll quickly try and show to you what that does here once we do finish up our Lair in just a little bit. Now, by the way, the Evolution Chamber, of course, does indeed provide us with the Zerg ground upgrades. So we got the melee upgrades, as well as the missile attacks, as well as the carapace ones, which will, of course, be, you know, 100-100 for melee, 100-100 right there for missile, as well as 150 and 150 for the carapace. And they benefit all of the Zerg units, just like they do in StarCraft 2. Now, there's going to be Adrenal Glands, there's going to be, you know, the Grooved Spines, as well as the Muscular Augments for the Ultralisk to increase their speed, as well as their attack range, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Instead, what I want to start up, now that our Lair is done, is our first major tech structure, and that is going to be the Spire. Now, the Spire, of course, one of the most, you know, typical Zerg units, and one of the most typical Zerg buildings, rather, that has ever been available in the game. I mean, I'm pretty sure every single one of you is going to be familiar with the Spire. It will allow us to produce 2 units. The first one, well, I guess technically speaking, once we morph it into a greater Spire, we can produce some more. But the first one is going to be the Ultralisk. The Ultralisk, of course, very well known for many reasons. It's a great harassment tool. But in StarCraft 1, it does seem to have quite a bit more use than the StarCraft 2 one does. Regardless, though, we can also produce ourselves a Scourge instead. So there's no Banelings or whatever available in StarCraft 1, of course. Instead, we can produce a Scourge unit instead. And the Scourge is very similar to the Baneling in the sense that it's sort of like a suicidal unit that can hit other flyers, and it does deal single target damage opposed to splash damage, but the idea is most definitely the same. You can use it to very quickly pick off, for example, dropships that can come in from a Terran player. I believe it only takes 2 Scourges to take down a full HP, dropship. So, say for example, a dropship is coming in right over here in this angle, I can just simply patrol a couple of my Scourges back and forth to make sure that it intercepts it. But the one thing that I have noticed about Scourges is that they've got this weird tendency to all die. Like, for some reason, they really, you know, all die very easily. Anyway, let's go ahead and produce a bunch of Ultralisk right here. And with my next set of larvae, I'll go ahead and create some Scourges too. Now, Scourges do also come out in pairs of 2, just like the Zerglings do. And they're actually pretty cheap, so they're sort of like a zoning unit most of the time. It seems like in professional StarCraft, at least, where it seems like a lot of the professional Terran Protoss and Zerg players are really good at playing around them. But they're used for like controlling terrain primarily. But of course, if you do mess up, you can easily use or lose a dropship worth of units. So here we go. Here's the Scourges. I'll quickly attack move on one of my Overlords so you can roughly see what they do. They quite literally, well, blow things up. You'll notice we're 2 Overlords right on top of each other. Anyway, here are the Ultralisk, of course. Now, one thing that is very common about the Ultralisk is that you can do all kinds of little micro tricks with them. I am no expert when it comes to that, but as you may have already noticed, right now, if I'm trying to get them really close up together, I can get them pretty close, but it requires a lot of clicking, right? It requires a lot of clicking. Now, after a couple of years of, like, you know, people playing professional StarCraft 1, they figured out that if you put another unit on a hotkey group, like a slow unit, like, for example, a Larva or an Overlord or anything along those lines, and the Overlord is the most common, if you put that on the same hotkey group as the Ultralisk, you can actually all of a sudden group them very closely together and micro them much more, you know, easily. Now, of course, the Overlord will try and fly here as well, but this allows you to essentially attack units here, like it is only a single Ultralisk. Because say, for example, I try an attack move on top of this little Zergling, and apparently the Zergling, come on there, Zergling. The target firing in this game is a little bit differently, but you can see right there, it almost looked like just a single Ultralisk was flying right there, and if you put them very closely together, you can do all kinds of little bits of micro. Now, cool thing is, and I'm going to try and attempt this, and I may actually fail a couple of times. Say, for example, a Scourge is an attack move, right? Because of the pathing in this game, you can actually move your Ultralisk around in a certain way that will prevent the Scourge from actually killing them. So because the pathing is a little bit weird, right? I'm gonna attack move with my Scourge on top of my Ultralisk, and I'm gonna fly my Ultralisk away. If you micro your Mutas really well, you can actually force the Scourge to back up. So basically the basic concept of how you do this is by morphing or moving your Ultralisk in a bit of a triangular formation. So hold up, let's create a little bit more distance right there. I may mess this up a couple of times because it's not an easy thing to do. But if you make your units move in like a triangular formation, you can see the Scourge backed up right there. Those little moves right there, and you know, it's gonna take a lot of practice to try and effectively, you know, execute that. The Scourge right there backed up. Because it was trying to deal with the collision and the detection. Basically, it was trying to get the correct pathing towards the Ultralisk. Because this game is pretty old, right? The pathing is not going to be quite as perfect as it is in StarCraft 2. You can make all kinds of cool moves in StarCraft 1 that are not available in StarCraft 2. And it's actually really cool. Because if you watch the professional players play in this game, there's a ton of potential with micro, just like that, for example, where you quickly click in 3 different locations and people figured out all kinds of technical bugs that over time turned into features. Anyway, very shortly I'll be morphing this one into a Great Aspire as well. For now, let's produce ourselves the Queen's Nest as well. The Queen's Nest, you know, the Queen in StarCraft 1 is quite a bit of a different unit than it is in StarCraft 2, of course. It's gonna be a necessity to tech up towards a Hive, and by the way, we can also get some more upgrades right here. Like, for example, the one that you may not be familiar with is indeed the antenna right there that increases the Overlord's sight range. But the Queen is gonna be a necessity to tech up to a Hive, and of course, it's always going to be one of the premier Spellcasters for the Zerg right here as well. So I'll quickly show you what it does here in a minute too. Zerg Queen's Nest, just about to finish up. And you can see, I should really go ahead and get the lurker aspect right here as well. You can see very shortly what that one looks like too. But in order to get the lurker aspect, you don't need to like morph in a lurker den or whatever. It's just basically a research in the Hydra den. You can morph your Hydras into lurkers right here very shortly as well. And actually, come to think of it, did I ever make the science vessel in the Terran video? I'm recording these back to back. I actually don't think I made the science vessel in that Terran video. Regardless though, it doesn't really matter all too much. I think that you probably realize what it does look like. Let's go ahead and create our first set of queens. Now, queens are very interesting. In the meantime, I'm also going to go ahead and tech up towards a Hive. They get all kinds of powerful abilities. For example, they've got the Ensnare ability right here. They've got the Spawn Brutling, which seems to be quite uncommon. But this is one of the spellcasters that I personally am a little bit less familiar with, just because it's not like the most common unit, I suppose, in StarCraft 1 as well. And it's quite a bit different than any of the units in StarCraft 2 are. But you'll quickly be able to see exactly what it looks like right here as well, now that 3 of them are supposed to come out. So these are actually flyers. They do fly around, so a very different unit than the StarCraft 2 one. I mean, they can fly over things already. That alone makes them already quite a bit differently. But you've got Spawn Brutlings, you've got Parasite right here, as well as Ensnare. And all of these abilities do have their different uses. Now, you can indeed use the Queen's Nest to tech up towards a Hive, which is exactly what I'm doing. At the same time, we got ourselves the Lurker Den done right here as well. I'm going to be able to very quickly get some of those Lurkers out. And Lurkers, of course, extremely good in this game. They deal a ton of damage. Like, the StarCraft 2 ones deal a lot of damage, but because the pathing is quite a bit different in this game, units seem to derp around for a little while longer as well. Usually, you seem to do a lot more damage with the Lurkers in StarCraft 1 compared to the ones in StarCraft 2. So we'll quickly try and do a little bit of damage right there as well. Here they are. Of course, one other, you know, it's such a identical, or it's such a, you know, typical unit for the swarm, I suppose. They won't do splash damage in friendly, you know, fire mode, but you can see the damage they deal. It is definitely a solid amount, and they're very good at zone control, obviously. Like, try and move something up this ramp. I dare you. Good luck. Alright, we're at Hive. So there's 2 more morphs that we can do at this level of play right here as well. We can go ahead and first off morph in the Greater Spire, and then secondly, we can also create ourselves an Ultralisk Cavern. And actually, before I forget about it, let's go ahead and create ourselves the Defiler Mount as well. And the Defiler Mount is one of the tier 3 units for the Swarm. I've had some brief experiences with it so far, and of course I've seen a lot of pro gamers play with it as well. An extremely strong unit. An extremely strong unit. It's one of the, you know, one of the sickest units when it comes to StarCraft 2 play here. Or StarCraft 1 play in general. I'm just trying to think here if I'm not forgetting any units, because I'm pretty sure I did forget the Science Vessel like I mentioned. I can make the Guardian and the Devourer here. I morph them off of the Ultralisk very, very shortly. We got the Zergling here as well, of course. They cannot be morphed into anything. Ultralisk already did get morphed. There's no Overseer available in this game, and the Queen can also not be, you know, morphed into anything else. But you can indeed infest the Terran Command Center with this one, which is actually a really cool ability that I sadly won't be able to show you right here because I'm not playing against an opponent. Anyway, Ultralisk Cavern is done. Now, there's one very cool upgrade here on Ultralisk called the Anabolic Synthesis. And I'll go ahead and create a couple of Ultras just to show you exactly what it looks like. That actually just cost me a ton of gas. I wonder if I should actually cancel some of these, because I'm going to have to morph in quite a couple of other units here as well. But Ultralisk on their own, I mean, they're not particularly fast. This is one of the coolest upgrades. So we still have chitinous plating here, but this one actually kind of surprised me, being a StarCraft 2 player first and foremost. The amount of value that this upgrade brings is absolutely insane. We'll go ahead and research here. Initially, our Ultras are not going to have their speed just yet, but they are so incredibly fast once that upgrade is done, that it's actually kind of surprising. It makes a very big difference. Of course, we can always get... and there they are, by the way. They sort of remind me of dogs in this game. Come on, guys. Oh, there's a single Zergling on the ramp. Of course, you guys are going to derp out. I'm not surprised. Of course, they're going to be able to move around just like this. They can also attack. I don't think they actually do any splash damage in this game. But they're still going to be able to take care of units very easily, even without any, you know, Evolution Chamber upgrades. But let's go ahead and patrol these guys back and forth for a little while, and we'll have a look at once this upgrade finishes up. Next up, I'm also going to be morphing in some of my Ultralisk upgrades. So we'll go ahead and produce 2 Guardians and then 2 Devourers as well. So here we go. Guardians being morphed in, Devourers being morphed in here as well. And at the same time, I'm also going to be producing my first bunch of Defilers. Let's have a quick look right here at the Ultralisk, or, you know, they kind of look like monkeys. Am I crazy? Am I the only one that sees that? Just look at the speed difference, okay? And like a StarCraft 2 player, you know, as a StarCraft 2 player first and foremost, right? This upgrade kind of surprised me because it makes them so much faster. Okay, here we go. Look at that! It's like they all of a sudden got roller skates on or something. I'm not sure what's up with that, but that makes such a huge difference. I mean, you can imagine the strength right here of a Zergling Ultralisk army, in particular with, like, you know, Ultralisk in the air and some of these Devilers as well. And there they are, by the way. We'll go over those in just a second. Let me go ahead and I don't want to go over all of the abilities, but let me go ahead and go over, in particular, we can get Consume, I suppose, as well as Plague. We're gonna have to make sure that we get some energy on these guys. It takes a little bit of time. Anyway. So our next units are indeed going to be the Devourer. Now the Devourer is one of the units that morphs off of the Ultralisk. It's like this big flying thing and it deals a lot of air damage. If I'm not mistaken, it puts like a debuff on units that it hits. You can see it doesn't attack particularly fast. But it puts like a debuff on units that supposedly makes it deal more damage over time as well. So it's a very powerful, like, it's sort of like a Corruptor in a way, I suppose. If you want to compare it to StarCraft 2 units, where it's a big, beefy flying unit. It's far stronger than the Corruptor, I suppose, but it's a big, beefy flying unit that is going to be support for your air army here as well. Together with the Ultralisk, and then of course the Guardians too. Now the Guardians, easy to compare them to Brute Lords. I think I actually prefer them to Brute Lords, although the Brute Lords are pretty cool too. But you can go ahead and attack units with them just like that. And it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna deal quite a bit of damage right there to your opponent's army. They deal a lot of damage actually. It doesn't maybe showcase that well on an Ultralisk, but they are very strong. And once they come out, they are most definitely a force to be reckoned with. So we got the Defiler. Now, those of you familiar with StarCraft 2, right? This is a unit that you may not recognize, and you may recognize some of the abilities from, like, you know, that's true for most of the Zerg spellcasters. Like, compared to StarCraft 2 and StarCraft 1, there's like, you know, quite a bit of differences between them, I suppose. But you will be able to see some of these abilities return on, for example, the Infestor as well as the Viper. Those are the two units that I guess, you know, took some of those abilities. Anyway, let's quickly go towards our Scorpions, towards our Devilers right here. So the Devilers are rather slow, right? But they've got a bunch of really cool spells. So first off, they got Dark Swarm. Now, Dark Swarm, and by the way, there's no smart casting in that game, Lowko. That was an absolute waste right there of energy. I can already see one StarCraft, you know, StarCraft gamer absolutely cringe right there. But that is a super powerful spell that basically buffs up your own units. It also is very powerful against, for example, Terran siege tanks and whatnot, and it covers a huge amount of terrain. Now, of course, as I mentioned during the Terran video, there is no such thing as smart casting in this game, whereas, you know, if you select all of these units and you're gonna try and cast one ability at one position, all of the units will cast it all at the same time, which is in particular a big deal if you are, for example, dealing, you know, with a spell like Dark Swarm, but also with, for example, Psionic Storm from the High Templar. If you know, have all of your units on one hotkey and you cast Storm, they will all cast Storm at the exact same position, and of course, Storm does not stack. Anyway, we got the second ability right here as well, called Plague. We're gonna need a little bit more, you know, a little bit more energy for that, but they are the Defiler right here. Now, I think there's one more building that I haven't quite shown off just yet, and that is going to be the Nydus Canal. I'm just mousing over everything else. I'm pretty sure I covered the rest of it. Nydus Canals do work a little bit differently in StarCraft 1 than they do in StarCraft 2. They do essentially have the same concept, but they can only be built on creep, which is already a big deal. And on top of that, the Nydus Worm and the Nydus Canals, I suppose, will only really have one exit. So I'm currently constructing the Nydus Canal right here. I can produce quite a few of them, and the nice thing about them that I personally really like is that they don't cost any gas. Usually, you know, Zerg is obviously gotta be quite gas starved, so they only cost minerals, which is very, very nice. And I'm gonna be able to get one exit out of each of these Nydus Canals each. So say, for example, I put up my Nydus Canal over there. Or my, yeah, I guess that's like the exit right there, and I want to morph in my lurker, or I want to move over my lurkers. I can put this on any creep anywhere on the map, so if I quickly want to defend like a base in the top left and I've got creep there, I can put the exit over there and, you know, quickly rally units in between. And the same can be said right here for the second Nydus Canal that I made. But, you know, there's always gonna only be a single exit to every single one of these units. So Nydus Canal just about to finish up there. If I put in my lurkers, they're gonna come out on the other end. Pretty straightforward. Now, one cool little thing about this, about these units, and let's quickly get the Ultralisk over here as well as the Guardians. If you kill one of the Nydus Canal's exits, right, or entrance, I suppose, both of them will actually die. So I will quickly kill the exit right here. So they're currently, you know, mauling away right there at the exit. The entrance just also ended up dying. And that is pretty much everything you need to know about the Swarm right here. Once again, we got the classic graphics as well. I think it's quite a bit easier to differentiate all of the units when you do switch over to the remastered version of the game instead. I mean, look at that. The polish right here is absolutely insane. Regardless though, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. As I mentioned, I'm going to be covering a lot more StarCraft Remastered. So if you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. There is going to be, you know, a lot more StarCraft Remastered content coming your way. And if you hit that subscribe button, you're going to be able to get notifications as soon as I upload those videos. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.